Hello and welcome to the Ministry of Bridges channel. This channel is about bridges, my bridges, your bridges. Today I'm going to chat with Alyssa and Daniella Castro from DNA Detailing in USA. Today's episode is all about Alyssa, Daniella and DNA Detailing. My name is Gabriel Neves and this is the Ministry of Bridges. Alyssa, Daniella, welcome to the Ministry of Bridges for the first episode of the series of interviews. I believe it's a great way to start this series of interviews with DNA Detailing. Well, first question, can we start by knowing who Alyssa and Daniella are?
Yeah, I'm Alyssa. I'm a California native and I have a master's in structural engineering. I really enjoy cooking, soccer, and I live in Portland, Oregon now with my husband and my toddler. And to illustrate my cooking skills, I went ahead and made your wife's famous egg tart recipe, world famous.
And I'm Daniella. I also grew up in California. I was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area by my mom, who's from Mexico. I have a bachelor's degree in architectural engineering, and I like cooking, traveling, dancing, and I currently live in San Jose, California.
So, when you thought about creating DNA Detailing, and what is DNA Detailing about?
So Alyssa and I used to work together at a structural engineering company before starting DNA. And when she first had the idea of us starting a company, she, told me her idea. I told her she was crazy. And she persisted. She continued to bring it up, even though every time I just blew her off. And eventually she wore me down. We sat down, we looked at the numbers, and we decided to go for it. Unlike Alyssa, I had never considered starting a business, but at the time I did really want a change in my career. And when we looked at the structure of it, we realized that we really had very little to lose if we could do this from home. And there wasn't really all that much risk. Worst case scenario, it wouldn't work, and then we would go find jobs again. So we started a completely remote 3D rebar detailing company that functions out of everyone's home office.
Where are you based and how many employees do you have?
We are based nowhere and everywhere. We all work remotely from our own homes, as Daniella said, and we have 3 female employees, including Daniella and I. And then we have our employee, Taylor, who lives in Denver, Colorado.
Now, a great question that for sure many viewers are very, very interested to know about. What is WBE certification? How did you get it? And why did you get it?
Yeah, good question. WBE stands for Women's Business Enterprise. And in some states, it's lumped together with the DBE, which is the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise. And either way, these certifications are obtained at the state level. And many public construction projects require that a certain percentage of the bid goes to DBE or a WBE certified firm. So yes, it can be quite important for us to have this certification. And it could give us a leg up in the bidding process for some projects. The application process is unfortunately separate for every state. Currently, there's no streamlined federal application or process or website or anything. And we had to gather information on our financial records, our personal assets, past contracts, our company structure, in order to prove that we were qualified. And it was actually quite a process. They don't make it very easy to get the certification. And I don't mean that the qualifications themselves are strict, but the process itself is really outdated and time consuming.
Yeah, I have to chime in and agree that while, like Alyssa said, the qualifications are quite simple, but the process of proving that is really unclear. There's a lot of vague documentation requirements. As soon as you have a remote business, it all just gets even weirder because none of the forms are geared towards that kind of business. So it's definitely doable, but it takes a lot of patience. And we want to shout out to our employee Taylor, because without her, I don't think we would have been able to get it done. She had the patience to sit on the phone with lots of different people from lots of different offices, asking all kinds of questions to actually get this done, get it complete, submitted, and achieve this goal that we've been trying to make ourselves do for years now.
Yeah, probably since we started the company, we've been thinking about it.
Does that mean I cannot ever work at DNA Detailing?
No, we have wigs. I'm just kidding. Anyone can work at DNA. The WBE simply means that the majority of the owners are women, and it doesn't impose any requirements on who we hire.
You refer that you are detailing reinforcement. What kind of structures DNA focus?
Mostly buildings. We've done everything from art centers to tech campuses, parking structures, and we did do one very fancy bridge. I think we could probably attempt to do almost anything with rebar.
And now a tricky one. What do you think about BIM or BRIM?
We, of course, believe that BIM can bring a lot of value to the construction industry, and we're really interested to see how this technology can be applied to the specific challenges of bridges. Models are most often used for clash detection, but we think that if these models are done right, these exact same models can be used to boost fabrication, boost job site efficiency, and unfortunately, that means spending the time planning and modeling ahead of the construction schedule, which doesn't often happen. So we think that there's a lot of untapped potential in the building and bridge modeling world.
And are your clients delivering IFC?
Yes, but only when the moon is full and Jupiter aligns with Saturn. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't know what an IFC is. Sometimes they don't even know how to export one. Normally, once we explain, it's not a huge issue, but there's some projects where it's like pulling teeth every time a model posts, and we're like, hey, can we get the IFC over here? And unfortunately, many BIM execution plans don't make requirements about IFC. Sometimes they have specific software requirements, like it might say something about Tekla or another program. But they only mention those proprietary file extensions. And so a lot of people are resistant to make and give IFCs if it's not in the contract. And that's one reason that we believe being really well-versed in many types of BIM software is important, because it helps you see the big picture. And you can't just write a BIM execution plan without kind of knowing the ins and outs of file sharing and expect it to work efficiently.
So what are the biggest challenges you face during your daily job?
I would say that our main challenge is still buy-in. There's a lot of people who create a model because it's required by a contract, but they don't actually believe that it's a better way of doing it. And they don't want to explore all the possible advantages of that model. Also, specifically for rebar, there's a lot of people that don't really have or understand the purpose of the rebar model. We're often hired to model something, but no one can actually give us a clear answer on how that model is going to be used. So people tend to just throw out the words clash detection when you ask for the purpose of a model, but that doesn't quite work for rebar. Everything clashes with rebar. So you can't apply the same systems and standards that you use with other materials, such as structural steel, to a rebar model. So understanding that is really crucial to getting the most out of the model itself. Otherwise, you're just blindly meeting a contract requirement. And we also tend to get a lot of stuff late, which is a real barrier to the process in general. We often have to submit models before we have penetration information or final elevator dimensions. And that slows everybody down and can potentially cost extra for the client as well.
What type of technology, hardware and software DNA Detailing uses to deliver the jobs to the clients?
Yeah, our modeling structure is strictly Tekla Structures. We don't use anything else. In terms of other software to get our job done, we use Bluebeam. We've been starting to incorporate a little bit of Rhino and Grasshopper that works hand in hand with Tekla. And in terms of hardware, we have custom desktop units with robust graphics cards. And the credit for that goes out to our IT department, which is Daniella's husband. He helps us pick all our parts and optimize the whole system. We also use gaming laptops as our travel computers because they tend to have the best performance when modeling. And our top choice so far has been Alienware's. We've tried a couple different ones, but those have been the best in our experience. And we also have a lot of personal comforts that we've acquired over the years working at home. So we've got these really cool standing desks that are motorized. They can go up and down. And we always are trying out new and different fancy mice, something ergonomic, special keyboards, stuff like that. When you're on the computer all day, it really makes a difference.
And the next one, I'm very curious. What do you like most about your jobs?
So I like a lot of things, but mainly I love being a business owner. As owners, we get to think big. We get to sit around and strategize about how to improve our business, our services, and then we get to go out and we actually get to implement it. We get to be really creative and we get to push those limits. And I find that super fun and rewarding.
I agree with that. I like when we see that something we don't agree with, we can change it. I also really love figuring out new ways to use Tekla or program components. Sometimes you get to experience that feeling of like winning when you figure out a way to solve a problem using old tools in new ways. I always joke where I'm like, I defeated you, Tekla.
How do you keep the DNA detailing team busy with the situation we're having right now?
So we've wrapped up a few projects this year and we have had stuff coming in, but there's definitely several of our larger bids out there that have been put on hold due to the pandemic. This is the first time as a company that we're experiencing an economic slowdown, and it's a little bit scary, but also we knew that this was coming, right? It can't always be smooth sailing. So getting our WBE certification was a big part of preparing for something like this. Government projects usually have their funding secured long before they get started. So it's a good way to stay afloat if the commercial sector is having a tough time. So our next focus is going to be to put the certification to use.
Any goals for 2020, or you just waiting for this 2020 to pass?
Well, our base goal is to hold the ship steady. But I do think this is a great time to research and innovate in-house. For example, we've both really wanted to learn some visual coding. So we're still hoping to pick up some new processes and skills this year.
Maybe a little Tekla API.
Yeah. We like to nerd out. So we get to take these slower times and really dig into new tools and expand our knowledge, which is actually fun for both of us.
Yeah, and I need to ask, so how do you see 2021 for our industry?
I think there's still going to be some hesitation to invest and build next year. Hopefully, governments will invest in some necessary infrastructure to fuel jobs in our industry. It's going to be interesting to see if COVID starts to affect the design of buildings as well. Maybe the design will be different in order to better accommodate social distancing in the future.
Yeah, or maybe we'll find some of our facilities are outdated. Well, many of them we already know are, but there may be a sense of urgency to update things like hospitals and care centers, after what's happened this year.
I'm thinking about our viewers that are thinking or they have dreams to start their own companies and start small and grow from there. Any advice, especially for those viewers?
Find mentors for sure. In the States, we have a really great organization called SCORE, and it will provide entrepreneurs with expert mentors, and it's a really, really great program. You can have confidence in yourself, sorry, I meant you should have confidence in yourself. So I will restart. Have confidence in yourself. You are your best advocate, but also recognize when something's out of your wheelhouse and you need to hire help, such as a lawyer or an accountant.
I'm also personally really glad that I didn't do this alone. But if you're going to have a business partner, you have to choose really carefully. You have to have really good communication. In fact, you should really think of it more of like a certain type of significant other. In the same way, you have to be willing to be open and honest, willing to compromise. You basically have to be able to have an argument and come out the other side still respecting each other. So if you decide to have a business partner, you have to choose really, really carefully. Realize that it's not something to take lightly.
I agreed with that as well. I think that, any advice that you read, people are going to say, don't go into business with your friends. And I think in general, that is really good advice. I think we just happen to be a little bit of a special case because we're really able to separate business and personal life in a way that, we can really discuss the hard details of owning a business and discuss, how to spend money, how to approach our projects, how do we go after clients. And some of those conversations can be really, really difficult. And, we're able to put that down and, of course, when it's not COVID times, go out for a happy hour or go camping together. And I think that, we're really good at balancing that and making it work. So I would definitely caution that, yes, choose carefully if you're going to have a partner. I think we definitely complement each other. I mean, even if you look at what we do in a Tekla model, like 9 times out of 10, Daniella's doing the columns and I'm doing the walls. We just happen to be kind of good at different things, and we do split up the work pretty well. And then even on the business side with admin stuff, there's certain tasks like maybe certain types of components I might be a little better at writing or more efficient at writing. And then other types Daniella takes over. And at this point we kind of know like who does what. And it's just an automatic, like, oh, here, can you do this? Can you make the title block? Can you, make this column component?
Yeah, I think as personalities go as well, just outside of the technical stuff, we do tend to balance each other out. I feel like because we know each other well, we sort of know how to react to each other. And I wouldn't say that one of us is always the good cop or bad cop, but, if Alyssa sees me acting like a bad cop, she's going to, balance that out. And be a little more chill and nice, and vice versa, right? Like if she sees me being a little too soft on something and really, really need to push, then she'll step in as well. So it really just takes a lot of communication and being really aware of the other person so that in the end, we're always putting the business first. And so far, I think that has worked really well. There usually isn't any point where both of us are losing our heads. Usually one of us can kind of get the other one to like come back to reality.
I think a great example is that when I write emails, I like to use maybe 3 exclamation points, and Daniella likes to use 0. So we often compromise with maybe 1 after the greeting. But I really do think that's a good example of how it can be hard to admit that like maybe your ideas aren't the best way to do something. And so having 2 people brings a little extra perspective to make sure that you don't go off on these like crazy tangents and do anything too extreme. So I think it's a good balancing act. 1 exclamation point.
And one last question, and for me is very, very important, this one, is what is your advice for our youngsters? How should we bring youngsters to our industry, to engineering, to detailing, for bridges, buildings?
Learn to model, learn to clash detect. A lot of these technologies aren't being taught in school. Engineering students are learning design and construction management students are learning scheduling. But most curriculums don't have a lot of BIM and modeling worked into them. And we're getting to the point in society where it's required on a lot of projects. You can still find projects that are all 2D. They're plenty common. But the direction the industry is going is going to be BIM, 3D, 3D, 3D. So really, being proficient in those technologies is going to, in a way, better secure your seat when you get to that first job. I think like knowing those things is really going to help you, embed yourself into projects and into the industry.
My advice to young people is to network. And I know that that's a term that gets thrown around a lot and it starts to sort of lose its meaning. But for me, it was not an easy thing to pick up. And so I want to break it down into something that is very specific. The way that I see networking, and this includes whether you're in a virtual conference, whether you're at a speaker event or a happy hour, all you have to do is show up, say hi to someone, introduce yourself, ask questions, and then follow up. And the questions can be anything. You don't have to have amazing, smart questions lined up. You show up, you say, hi, how's it going? Do you live around here? Great. How long have you lived here? Oh, you're from Idaho? I've never been there. What kind of thing would you recommend to someone who is gonna go to Idaho? The point is just to have a conversation and have that person remember you. Remember some details, follow up by email, or maybe even a card if you want to be extra personal. And that's it. Just build relationships. It sounds really scary at first, but it's a skill that can be learned. And it's actually super important if you're just starting out. It's a great way of getting your foot in the door and making the kind of connections that could change your career or your life forever. But there's no way to know until you literally just show up and start talking.
I totally agree with that. I would argue that, some of our success is that I think Danielle and I are fairly memorable people, not to like toot our own horn, but, I think we go to conferences and we're not afraid to just talk and socialize. And I think we're not hung up on being like nervous and saying like, or am I going to say the right technical thing? Or am I going to, talk enough about like industry hot words? And I think we're just memorable in that sense because we're fun to be with, we're fun to hang out with. And I think we also gravitate towards people that are like that. And so when I look at, as a business owner, if I was going to hire someone, I would definitely be more inclined to give, that person a call back or a second interview if they're just sociable and likable. And I'm not saying that like, introverts don't have a chance. It's, you can definitely get someone one-on-one and have a quiet conversation. And it's just about showing that interest and that initiative and then keeping those contacts. You never know, like a few years down the line when you've changed jobs a couple of times, that person may be able to help you out or vice versa.
I definitely think that in general, you do have to like it. So if you have interest in science, engineering, math, then this is a great industry to be in. One of the most interesting things about the construction industry in general is that it's actually quite outdated. And while that might be a turnoff for some people, it actually means that there's a ton of room for innovation and change and progress. And for young people, this is an industry where you can come in and actually be part of that change, which is interesting. And it also just allows for a lot more opportunities to move up rather quickly because you can become an expert in something pretty early in your career because it's something that just wasn't done before, right? It's why Alyssa and I were able to start a company in our 20s, which is the fact that so few people know how to use this technology. So in our 20s, we were already experts compared to a lot of other people in the industry. So it's a cool place to be because of the potential.
I agree with that. I think that, when I was probably graduating high school and going into college, when you thought about using computers for your career, there was maybe like one or two majors that you would choose, maybe computer science or something like that. Now, because, construction is a little bit behind and our industry hasn't really adopted all those technologies, it's the perfect time to kind of flood the marketplace with those skills. If you can program and you can see things from that logical side, you don't even have to love looking at bridges or doing math problems. I think that there is still an application for technology in this industry. So of course, if you do like bridges or structures or, looking at construction sites, then I think construction might be for you. But I think there's also a lot of different interests that can find a home in the construction industry. And that goes for, your hobbies, your interests, your skills, but also, women, men, lots of different types of people. You can work from home, you can work in an office. So there's definitely a lot of options. And I would definitely encourage anyone that is in that, pre-university level to give it serious thought, because I think there's a lot of different avenues that are new and exciting.
Well, I wish all the best for Daniella, Alyssa, and all the DNA Detailing team. If you are interested to contact DNA Detailing for services, reinforcement rebar services, please do so by emailing them, info@dnadetailing.com. There is no rebar they cannot do. After all, they're using Tekla Structures. So if it is tricky, send that to them and they will do it. Now it's time to say goodbye for today, and I'll leave you today with a question that you need to use the comment box below. Do you agree, or what do you think about this kind of initiatives the governments are having to support small and micro companies? And just one more thing before you go. Have you watched the Fourth Bridge or the Avon Aqueduct special episodes? This is a great opportunity if you haven't watched it yet. And now I'll ask my guests to join me with a farewell. Alyssa, Daniella, do you mind to help me to ask our viewers to subscribe, like and comment in their Bridges channel? Please, let's start.
I appreciate it if you could leave a comment, like and support your Ministry of Bridges channel by clicking the
subscribe button.
I think in honor of the three ladies at DNA, you need to finish the Three Sisters Bridges.
Have a DNA day.
DNA day. Tell your wife thank you for this recipe. My husband and I ate like 20 of them. Because of your wife, I'm probably going to go buy 20 or 30 little tart pans.
It's very cool. And are you buying the, I don't know the name of that pastry. I'm going to say, and they're going to laugh. Poof.
Puff pastry?
I always pick the wrong one. Always. Puff.
I like poop better. I think we should start calling it poop pastry.
Anyway, you buying or are you doing it?